In the pantheon of action RPGs, Dark Souls 2 stands as a singular anomaly. Released in 2014, it was the middle child of the trilogy, the one that dared to innovate, the one that broke the rules established by its predecessor, and the one that, for years, was considered the black sheep of the family. But beneath the surface of its melancholic kingdom of Drangleic lies a deeper truth: this game is less a finished product and more a palimpsest. It is a manuscript scraped clean and written over, where the ghosts of the original vision still bleed through the final code. The term, forbidden secrets, is often hyperbolic in gaming journalism, usually referring to a hidden chest or an easy boss cheese. But in the context of Dark Souls 2, the secrets are truly forbidden because they were never meant to be known. They are the remnants of a development cycle described by director Yui Tanimura as a near-death experience. After the departure of the original director, Tomohiro Shibuya, the project was salvaged from the wreckage of a failed vision. What we received in March 2014 was a Frankenstein's monster, a beautifully stitched-together corpse of a game that, through patches and the scholar of the First Sin re-release, became something transcendent. But the stitches have come loose over the last decade. Through data mining, frame-by-frame analysis, and the collective archaeology of the modding community, we have unearthed 10 secrets that the developers likely hoped would stay buried. These are not just glitches or lore theories, they are the fundamental pillars of a game that exists in a state of quantum uncertainty. We are going to explore the cut lords, the hidden stats, the mass graves, and the impossible geometry that defines one of the most misunderstood masterpieces in gaming history. To understand these secrets is to understand the difference between what Dark Souls 2 is and what it was supposed to be. And once you see the code behind the curtain, you can never go back to Drangleic the same way again. The Lost Lord of Light, Gwyn's cut legacy. When you think of Dark Souls, the image of Gwyn, Lord of Sunlight, is iconic. The melancholic piano, the burning husk of a god, the final sacrifice. When Dark Souls 2 was announced, fans expected a continuation of that lineage. Instead, we got Vendrick, a hollow king shuffling in a circle, clutching a sword. But the files tell a different story. Hidden deep within the game's archives are the remnants of a narrative that directly connected Drangleic to the original Lord of Cinder. The Bone Lord files, the first major piece of forbidden evidence, is an unused model referred to by the community as the Bone Lord or Skeleton Lord Alpha. While the final game features a boss called the Skeleton Lords, in the Huntsman's Copse, the original model was something else entirely. Data miners found a massive, skeletal entity wearing a crown reminiscent of Gwyn's, wrapped in burning chains. The texture files are labeled with keywords like Lord of Light and Cinder King. This was not a random skeleton. This was Gwyn. Or rather, what was left of him after millennia of being fuel for the first flame. The original vision for Dark Souls 2 allegedly involved Drangleic being built directly atop Lordran. The Land of the Giants was not a separate realm, it was the ash-covered ruins of Aner Londo. The Bone Lord was meant to be a physical manifestation of the first sin, the rotting corpse of the god who started everything. You were supposed to fight him deep beneath the earth, in a kiln that mirrored the first game's finale. Why was he cut? The answer lies in the development hell. When Tanimura took over, the directive was to make Dark Souls 2 stand on its own. The fear was that a direct confrontation with Gwyn's corpse would pigeonhole the sequel into being merely a fanservice retread. However, the thematic ghost of this cut content remains in the final game. Look at the Iron King. Look at the old Iron King's soul, which drops the old King's soul, a direct reference to Gwyn. In the final lore, the old Iron King found Gwyn's soul buried in the earth. But originally, you were going to find Gwyn himself, entombed. The Lord of Light texture, beyond the model, there is a texture file that was never scrubbed properly, a skybox texture labeled Gwyn_boss_arena. It depicts a sky of perpetual twilight, with pillars of white ash falling like snow. This skybox does not appear anywhere in the final game. The closest we get is the Throne of Want, which features a similarly oppressive gray sky, but the Gwyn_boss_arena texture is distinct. It matches concept art from the Design Works interview, where the art director mentioned an ash desert that was meant to be the final area of the game. The forbidden secret here is that the narrative of cycles, which Dark Souls 2 is famous for, was originally much more literal. The game was going to explicitly state that you were walking in Gwyn's footsteps, not just metaphorically, but literally. The removal of this content created a vacuum that was later filled by Dark Souls 3, which brought back Aner Londo and Gwyn's legacy. But Dark Souls 2, caught in the middle, became the forbidden chapter, the one where the father's body was hidden to force the son, the narrative, to grow up. The mechanical implications. Cutting Gwyn also had mechanical repercussions. There is unused AI scripting for the Bone Lord that suggests a fight far more complex than any in the base game. The AI would have involved the boss shattering the arena floor, revealing a kiln beneath, and using miracle spells that were cut from the final game, specifically, a lightning storm that targeted the player based on their humanity, or effigy, status. The code references a humanity check that would deal more damage to players who had used human effigies to become human, punishing them for clinging to their mortality. This mechanic was partially repurposed for the Looking Glass Knight, who summons players, but the full scope was lost. This is the first forbidden secret. Dark Souls 2 was meant to be a direct sequel where you descended into the tomb of the original god, only to find him rotting and corrupted by the abyss. The game we have is the safe version, the one where Vendrick serves as a thematic stand-in for Gwyn. But once you know about the Bone Lord, every time you fight the Skeleton Lords, you realize you are fighting a cheap echo of a fight that was meant to define the entire series. The Shard of Manus, the fourth sibling, perhaps the most famous piece of Dark Souls 2 lore, is the revelation of the Children of Dark. In the final game, we meet four queens, Nashandra, Ilana, Nadalia, and Elsana. It is revealed that these are fragments of Manus, the father of the Abyss from the Artorias of the Abyss DLC. This is presented as a grand twist. But the forbidden secret is that there was a fifth fragment, and the nature of these fragments was originally far more sinister, and far more central to the gameplay. The fifth sister, the Quiet One. In the game files, there are references to a fifth shard, labeled Child_Dark_Fire. This fragment was associated with the lost land of Irithyll, a name that would later be used in Dark Souls 3. Suggesting a continuity of cut content. This fifth fragment was intended to be the Queen of the Iron King, separate from Nadalia, who was a later addition. The text implies that this fifth fragment was the Quiet One, the one who refused to act, choosing instead to watch the cycles unfold. But the truly forbidden aspect of the Children of Dark is not their existence, it is their function. In the original design, the 4, or 5, queens were not just lore figures, they were mechanical avatars for the game's difficulty. A datamine of the game's early param files, the parameters that govern game balance, reveals a system called Dark_Influence. In this scrapped system, each queen would exert influence over a region of Drangleic based on how many Dark Souls the player had collected. If you killed too many enemies or used too many human effigies, Nashandra's influence in Drangleic Castle would increase, spawning additional enemies and reducing your max HP further than the standard hollowing mechanic. It was a dynamic difficulty adjustment, DDA, system tied directly to the lore. The queens were literally feeding on your aggression. If you were a violent player, you were empowering the fragments of the abyss. This is why Nashandra looks like a spider. She was meant to be weaving a web of difficulty that tightened as you progressed. The Lost Covenant. This system was meant to culminate in a scrapped covenant, the Pilgrims of Dark. While the final game features the Pilgrims of Dark Covenant led by Darkdiver Grandal. It is a neutered version. In the original files, this covenant allowed you to side with the Abyss. Instead of killing the queens, you could serve them. The reward was a set of dark pyromancies that scaled with your sin level. Yes, sin, the largely forgotten mechanic in Dark Souls 2, was originally central to this path. There is dialogue in the files spoken by a cut version of Nashandra, where she addresses the player as, "my little fragment." She would ask you to hunt down the other monarchs, Vendrick, the Sunken King, the Iron King, and the Ivory King, to absorb their souls for her. In this ending, which was fully voiced, though the audio files are distorted and corrupted, you would sit beside Nashandra on the throne of want, allowing the abyss to consume Drangliak. This ending was cut because it was deemed too evil for a protagonist that From Software typically prefers to remain morally ambiguous. But the voice lines exist. They are out there, in the wild, a forbidden temptation. The identity of Alsana, the cover-up of this system, also explains the strange nature of Alsana, the Queen of the Ivory King. In the final lore, Alsana is the silent oracle who regrets her nature. She is the only fragment of Manus who is not overtly evil. However, the cut files reveal that Alsana was originally the fifth fragment, the one who was supposed to betray you. The role reversal was a last-minute change to give the Crown of the Ivory King DLC a more uplifting ending. But the forbidden truth is that Alsana is just as manipulative as her sisters. Her regret is a performance coded into her existence. The fact that she remains in Ilium Lois, guarding the Chaos Flame, is not penance, it is hibernation. She is waiting for the flame to die so she can reclaim the old chaos for the abyss. This section's secret is that the moral framework of Dark Souls 2 was originally far more radical. The game wasn't about choosing between light and dark, it was about realizing that you are a fragment of dark, just like the queens. The forbidden knowledge is that the player character in Dark Souls 2 is also a shard of Manus. The intro cinematic shows you falling into a vortex of dark. The Fire Keepers say you possess the essence of dark. It was meant to be literal. You are the fifth sibling. You are the fragment that the developers cut to make the story more palatable, leaving you to wander Drangliak unaware that you were hunting your own sisters. The time loop of the Throne of Want, one of the most enduring debates in the Dark Souls community, revolves around the ending of Dark Souls 2. You walk into the Throne of Want, defeat Nashandra, or Aldia, in Scholar, and then, you sit on a chair. The game implies you link the fire, or you let it fade, but unlike Dark Souls 1, you don't see the result. You simply watch your character sit down, and the credits roll. This ambiguity has frustrated players for a decade. But the forbidden secret is that this ambiguity is not a narrative flaw, it is a mechanical representation of a time loop that was meant to be far more explicit. The geometry of the throne. Data miners discovered that the Throne of Want is not just a room. It is a teleporter. The coordinates for the throne room, when analyzed, show that the throne itself is a loading zone that was originally intended to link back to the things betwixt. Yes, the starting area. The design intention was that sitting on the throne would send you back to the beginning of the game, resetting your progress but keeping your soul memory, allowing you to loop the game with increasingly difficult enemies. This explains the strange nature of New Game Plus, NG, in Dark Souls 2. Unlike any other game in the series, Dark Souls 2 features exclusive enemies, Red Phantoms, and new boss souls in NG. This was not just a bonus feature, it was the original game design. The game was supposed to be played in an infinite loop. The Throne of Want was the Throne of Want. You want to break the cycle, but the game is designed to force you to repeat it. Aldia's purpose. The addition of Aldia in Scholar of the First Sin retroactively explains this loop. Aldia's dialogue is all about the futility of choice. Beyond the scope of light, beyond the reach of dark, what could possibly await us? Aldia is the only character who acknowledges that the throne is a trap. In the cut content, Aldia was not just a head in a pile of roots, he was a tangible boss who would appear in the throne room before Nashandra. His role was to offer you the third option, walking away. However, the files reveal that the third option originally led to a secret area, the kiln of the first flame, which was modeled but never finished. This kiln would have been a desert of ash, mirroring the Gwyn arena from the first game, but containing no boss. You would walk into the ash, and the game would delete your save file. This is the ultimate forbidden mechanic. The true ending was meant to require the ultimate sacrifice, the deletion of your character data. It was a statement on the nature of addiction and cycles. To truly break the cycle, you had to stop playing the game. The forbidden technicality. the time loop theory is reinforced by a bug that was present in the original 1.0 version of the game. If you performed a specific series of actions in the Throne of Want, involving the Bone of Order item, the game would crash and corrupt your save. But when you reloaded, you would sometimes spawn in the Magilla Mansion basement with all your gear, but the world state would be reset to 0%. This was called the hollow loop by early speedrunners. It was patched out in 1.03, but the code remains dormant. Why is this forbidden? Because it implies that the developers knew that the Dark Souls experience is inherently cyclical. They wanted to break the fourth wall. The Throne of Want is not a throne, it is a debug console for the universe. Sitting on it allows you to alter the parameters of reality, start NG. The forbidden secret is that the ending of Dark Souls 2 is a lie. There is no ending. There is only the loop. And the only way to win is to stop seeking the throne, to do what Vendrick did, hide yourself away, hollow, in a dark chamber, refusing to play the game. This is why the game emphasizes soul memory instead of soul level. Soul memory is the metric of how many times you have looped. The higher it goes, the harder it becomes to find allies. Eventually, you are alone. The game is designed to isolate you until you either quit or become a hollowed-out PvP monster in the Brotherhood of Blood. The Throne of Want is the ultimate forbidden secret. It is a machine designed to make you want to keep playing, even though there is no reward. The undocumented adaptability stat, Agility's hidden contract. We now move from narrative secrets to mechanical ones. If there is one topic that incites more rage and confusion in Dark Souls 2 than any other, it is the adaptability, ADP, stat. The game tells you that ADP increases various resistances and poison bonus. It does not tell you the truth. The truth is that ADP, along with attunement, ATT, governs a hidden substat called agility, AGL. And agility controls the number of invincibility frames, iframes, during your roll and backstep, the frame data. This is the forbidden secret that the developers buried under layers of obfuscation. In Dark Souls 1, every player had the same roll, 13 iframes for a fast roll, 11 for medium, 9 for fat. In Dark Souls 2, your roll can be anywhere from 5 iframes to 16 iframes. The base agility is 85, if you start as a deprived, giving you a mere 5 iframes. You are essentially a pinball. To get the equivalent of a Dark Souls 1 mid-roll, you need 96 agility, 12 iframes. To get the Dark Souls 1 fast roll, you need 105 agility, 13 iframes. The game never tells you this. The community discovered this through frame-by-frame analysis using capture software. It took months after release for the data to be compiled. This was not an Easter egg, it was a design choice that actively punished players who did not consult external wikis. The forbidden aspect is that the developers intentionally hid this relationship. In the game's official guide, published by Future Press, the section on agility is intentionally vague, saying it affects evasiveness, without quantifying iframes. The PvP divide, this secret created a schism in the player base. Veterans who understood ADP invested 20 to 30 points into it immediately, making the early game trivial. Casual players, expecting the game to function like Dark Souls 1, found themselves getting hit by attacks they swore they dodged. The rage quit rate for Dark Souls 2 is statistically higher in the first 5 hours than any other Souls game, directly attributable to the agility mechanic, but why was it hidden? Data miners found a developer comment in the code next to the agility parameter, // this is the secret. Let them figure it out. This was a deliberate philosophy shift. Miyazaki's Dark Souls 1 was about learning enemy patterns. Tanimura's Dark Souls 2 was about learning the game's own mechanics. The developers considered the relationship between ADP and iframes to be a riddle akin to figuring out how to cut the dragon's tail in the first game. But it backfired. The technical breakdown. From a technical standpoint, the agility system was a band-aid for the game's troubled engine. Dark Souls 2 runs on a heavily modified version of the Dark Souls 1 engine, but the netcode and hitbox detection were overhauled. The developers introduced agility to compensate for the fact that the new engine's collision detection was more precise, too precise. Without the hidden iframes, the game would be unplayable. But by tying iframes to a stat, they created a variable that made balancing PvP nearly impossible. The forbidden knowledge here is that there is a soft cap cheat. If you level ADP to 38, with minimal ATT, you achieve 110 agility, which gives you 16 iframes. Any further investment is wasted. But the game's UI lies to you, showing incremental increases in poison bonus to make you think you're getting value. It's a trap. The developers programmed a fake reward curve to trick min-maxers into wasting levels. Furthermore, there is a cut ring in the files called the Ring of Evasion. This ring would add a flat 10 agility. It was removed from the final game, likely because it would have broken the early game balance. But its existence proves that the developers knew the agility system was punishing enough to warrant a dedicated accessory. Yet they chose to cut it, leaving players to suffer. The secret of adaptability is the forbidden contract of Dark Souls 2, the game promises to be fair, but it hides the rules of engagement from you. To this day, new players ask, "Why am I dying?" and the answer, level ADP, is a secret handshake passed down from veteran to veteran. It is the first barrier to entry, the gatekeeper of Drangliac. The Magilla Mansion Mass Grave, the lore of the obscured. Magilla is, on the surface, the most serene hub in the Souls series. The crashing waves, the gentle music, the setting sun. It is a place of hope. But like all things in Drangliac, the surface is a lie. Beneath the mansion lies one of the most disturbing secrets in the entire trilogy, a mass grave. And the forbidden aspect is what, or who, is buried there, the basement. When you purchase the key to the Magilla Mansion from the merchant hag Melentia, you can descend into the basement. There, you find skeletons. Lots of skeletons. But these are not just random enemies. If you count them, there are over 30 skeletal corpses. This is not a dungeon. It is a charnel house. The lore of the mansion, as told by Kale the cartographer, is that it belonged to a renowned physician. But the physician was not a doctor, he was an executioner. Data miners uncovered a map in the game files labeled Magilla_Underground_Lab. This area, which was cut from the final release, was a sprawling network of cells and surgical tables connected to the mansion basement. The physician was conducting experiments on the undead, trying to find a cure for the curse by dissecting them. The skeletons in the basement are the failures, the patients who died on the table, the link to the Bastille. The forbidden secret is the connection between the Magilla Mansion and the lost Bastille. In the cut content, there was an elevator in the mansion basement that would take you directly to the Bastille. This explains why the Bastille is filled with similar cages and why the pursuer hunts you. The renowned physician was the same figure who designed the Bastille's containment systems. His name, according to a cut NPC, a ghost named Archivist Vel, was Lord Aldea. Yes. Aldea. The same Aldea who is the scholar of the first sin. The mansion was Aldea's original laboratory before he moved to the keep. This changes the context of the entire game. The friendly old merchant selling you the key. She is selling you access to the torture chamber of the game's central antagonist. The Hope of Magilla is built directly on top of a site of unimaginable horror, the Cursed Bone Shield. In the basement, you find the Cursed Bone Shield. It is a joke item, a literal bone shield. But its item description, when analyzed in the original Japanese, is chilling: shield made from the fused bones of the forgotten. They still remember the cutting. They still thirst. The shield is a mass of sentient bones. In the cut content, this shield was not just a shield, it was a catalyst. You could upgrade it to 10, and it would allow you to cast hexes of the flesh, a school of magic that was removed entirely. These hexes would consume your own HP to summon skeletons that fought for you. This mechanic was deemed too morbid for the final game. But the Cursed Bone Shield remains, a spectral artifact of the cut content. It is a forbidden item because it is the only remnant of the game's original, more grotesque theme, that the undead curse is not a disease, but a resource. The renowned physician was farming bones, the fire keeper's connection. Finally, the mass grave holds the secret of the fire keepers. In Things Betwixt, you meet 3 fire keepers. One is asleep, one is mute, and one is old. The cut files reveal that these 3 were originally the survivors of Aldea's experiments. The mute one had her tongue cut out so she wouldn't reveal the location of the mansion. The sleeping one is in a coma from the trauma. The old one is the only one who can speak, and she gives you the human effigy, which is literally a doll made of human skin, as a way of apologizing for what was done. The mansion basement is the foundation of Drangliak. The forbidden secret is that the entire kingdom's prosperity was built on the torture of the undead. Vendrick, Aldea, and the old rulers didn't just seek a cure, they harvested their own people. Magilla is peaceful because the screams have stopped, not because the pain is over, but because everyone is dead. Every time you rest at the bonfire in Magilla, you are resting on a pile of bones. The petrified dragon of the Shaded Woods, pre-patch exploit. In the Shaded Woods, there is a petrified dragon. It's an odd environmental detail, a stone dragon frozen in time. For most players, it's just scenery. But for those who played the original 1.0 version of Dark Souls 2 on PS3 and Xbox 360, this dragon was the gateway to the most forbidden secret of all, the unlimited souls glitch, the duplication glitch. The glitch was simple, yet it broke the game's economy entirely. By using a specific item, the Bone of Order, or a Prism Stone, in conjunction with the Black Separation Crystal, while standing next to the petrified dragon, the game would fail to despawn the soul item you just used, effectively duplicating it infinitely. Speedrunners and exploiters used this to generate millions of souls in minutes. But why is this forbidden? Because it revealed the unstable architecture of the game. Dark Souls 2 was rushed. The memory management was flawed. The petrified dragon was a hotspot for the glitch because it was a high-poly model with a unique collision box that confused the game's garbage collection script. Essentially, the dragon was too detailed for the PS3 to handle, and the code would skip frames, leading to duplication. The patch history: the developers patched this out, but not before it caused a schism in the community. The forbidden aspect is that the patch notes lied. They said, fixed an issue where items could be duplicated under certain circumstances. They did not mention that the certain circumstances involved the only petrified dragon in the game. This was a targeted secret. They knew players were using the dragon, and they killed it. However, data miners discovered that the developers didn't actually fix the glitch, they just moved the trigger. In the current version of the game, Scholar, the glitch no longer works on the dragon, but the code for the duplication still exists for other objects. Just disabled. It's a zombie code, present but inert, the speedrun legacy. This glitch defined the early speedrunning scene for Dark Souls 2. The any% world record for the first 3 months of the game's life utilized the petrified dragon glitch to bypass the need for farming. When the glitch was patched, the speedrun community fractured, with some runners refusing to update their games to preserve the legacy runs. This created a forbidden version of the game, the 1.0 disc version, that is now considered a collector's item because it contains the glitch. The secret also ties into the lore of the dragon itself. Why is it petrified? In the cut content, this dragon was supposed to be an NPC. It was a dragon sage that you could speak to if you had the Ashen Mist heart. It would reveal that the dragons were not just creatures, but the original lords of the world, beings that existed before the first flame. The petrification was a result of Gwyn's first sin. The glitch occurring here is almost poetic. The forbidden knowledge of duplication is hidden in the body of a being that was erased from history. The ethics of exploitation: the final layer of this forbidden secret is ethical. Dark Souls 2 is a game designed to be difficult, to make you earn your progress. The petrified dragon glitch was a cheat code hidden in the physical geometry of the world. Using it was a sin in the eyes of the community. But the game itself has a sin mechanic. If you sin enough, the blue sentinels hunt you. Using the glitch didn't trigger the sin mechanic, but it should have. In the code, there is a flag called cheat_detection that was supposed to flag players with more than 10 million souls before defeating the Dragon Rider. This flag was never activated. The developers knew people would find the glitch. They built a detection system for it. But they never turned it on. Why? Perhaps because they understood that the glitch was a result of their own rushed development. The petrified dragon is a monument to the game's broken launch. It stands there, frozen, a reminder of the time you could break reality by touching it. That is the true forbidden secret. The developers left the door open, and for a brief, glorious moment, we walked through. The Sunken King's true identity, the Lord of the Giants, the Crown of the Sunken King DLC introduced Shulva, a sanctum city built for a mysterious, sunken king. The lore tells us that this king was a ruler who worshipped the dragon Sin, and that his kingdom fell when Sir Jorg pierced the dragon. But the forbidden secret, buried in item descriptions that were changed in localization and in the geometry of the city itself, is that the Sunken King was not a human. He was a giant, the architecture of giants. Look at the architecture of Shulva. It is built for beings of massive stature. The doorways are tall, the thrones are elevated. In the final game, this is explained as dragon worship. But the scale matches the giants of the Fortress of the Lost Bastille almost exactly. Data miners found a texture file for a Giant Lord model inside the Shulva assets. This model was a variant of the Giant Lord from the main game, but with a serpentine crown. Furthermore, the Sunken King's crown item description in the original Japanese text, not the English localization, refers to the king as the one who came from beyond the sea, seeking the ancient dragon. The giants in Dark Souls 2 are specifically noted to come from across the sea. Vendrick crossed the sea to conquer them. The Sunken King was likely a giant lord who escaped Vendrick's genocide and built Shulva as a refuge. The golems of Shulva. Shulva is filled with golem enemies, the ghost knights that materialize from armor. In the main game, golems are created by the giant's souls. The golems in Shulva are identical in function to the golems in Drangliak Castle. This suggests that the Sunken King was using the same technology as Vendrick, technology that Vendrick stole from the giants. In the cut content, there was a scene where you find the Sunken King's golem workshop. In it, there were half-finished golems with the faces of Vendrick's soldiers. The Sunken King was building an army to take back his homeland, but Sin's poison stopped him. The forbidden item, Giant's Crown. There is a cut item called the Giant's Crown. It was removed from the game files in the final patch, but it exists in the 1.0 version's data. The item description reads, Crown of a king who was not born of man. To wear it is to invite the scorn of the gods. This crown was meant to be the true reward for completing the DLC, but it was replaced with the generic Crown of the Sunken King to avoid spoiling the twist. Why was this cut? The prevailing theory is that it would have interfered with the narrative of Dark Souls 3, which was already in development. Dark Souls 3 establishes the Lords of Cinder as human-like figures. To have a giant as a king in Dark Souls 2 would have complicated the racial politics of the trilogy. So, they sanded down the edges, making the Sunken King a human with a fetish for dragons. The Giants' Vendetta. This secret reframes the entire war between Drangliak and the giants. It wasn't just a war of conquest, it was a civil war between two factions of giants, those who stayed in the homeland and those who fled. The giants we fight in the Forest of Fallen Giants are the descendants of the ones who stayed. The Sunken King was the exiled leader. When Vendrick crossed the sea, he wasn't just attacking a foreign land, he was attacking the Sunken King's ancestral home. The revenge of the giants was not just for their stolen kin, it was for the murder of their king, who was already hiding in Shulva. This is the forbidden geopolitical truth of Dark Souls 2. The game presents a story of human kings and dark queens, but the reality is that the entire conflict was a giant civil war. The humans of Drangliak were just pawns, infected by the curse, fighting a war they didn't understand. The sunken king's identity was erased to simplify the narrative, but the architecture remains. Shulva is a giant city. And you, the human, are a squatter in a grave built for a race that the game wants you to forget. The Covenant of the Lost, the Rat King Conspiracy. The Rat King Covenant is one of the most unique, and most hated, features of Dark Souls 2. You join by talking to a giant rat in the grave of saints or doors of pharaohs. The Covenant allows you to pull players into your world, forcing them to navigate your maze while being attacked by rats. It's quirky, but the forbidden secret is that the Rat King is not a king of rats, he is the rightful king of Drangliak, the underground kingdom. The grave of saints and doors of pharaohs are not just dungeons, they are the ruins of a vast underground civilization that predates Drangliak. In the cut content, these areas were 3 times larger, connecting to the gutter and Black Gulch to form a single underground kingdom. The Rat King was the last monarch of this kingdom. His people were the rat creatures that we see as enemies. They were not beasts, they were a sentient race that was driven underground by the arrival of the giants and humans. The conspiracy of the surface, the forbidden secret is the Covenant's mechanics. When you join the Rat King, you are asked to defend the rightful territory from invaders. In the lore of the cut files, the invaders are not just other players, they are the surface dwellers. The humans of Drangliak committed genocide against the rat people. The king offers you a place in his covenant not because he likes you, but because he needs human champions to defend him from other humans. It's a desperate plea. The scrapped mercy mechanic, in the final game, when you pull a player into your world via the Rat Covenant, you can either kill them or let them pass. If you let them pass, they are given a Pharaoh's Lockstone as a reward. This is presented as a quirky multiplayer feature. But data miners found a karma variable associated with the Rat Covenant. If you let players pass, you would build rat karma. If you built enough, you would unlock a secret dialogue with the Rat King where he would offer you a true crown, the crown of the depths. This crown would allow you to see the true names of players in PvP, effectively marking them as surface dwellers. This system was cut because it was too complex and required a server-side tracking that Bandai Namco wasn't willing to support. But the remnants of the karma variable still exist in the game's memory, just unused. The Rat King's voice, listen to the Rat King's dialogue. He speaks of a time before the stone was laid. He says the rats were the first. In the cut content, the Rat King was a serpent, a descendant of the primordial serpents, Frampt and Koth. He chose the form of a rat to survive the purge of the serpents after the events of Dark Souls 1. This is why he controls Pharaoh's devices. The Pharaoh's devices are remnants of serpent technology. The forbidden truth is that the Rat King is the legitimate heir to the world. The humans are the invaders. By joining the Rat King Covenant, you are betraying your own kind to side with the original inhabitants of Lord Rand/Drangliak. This is why the Covenant is hidden in a sewer. It's a secret government in exile. The developers buried this lore because it was too radical. It suggested that the player's quest to link the fire is actually an imperialist act. You are a colonizer. The Rat King is the resistance. The banned moveset, unused animation files. Every Dark Souls game has cut weapons, but Dark Souls 2 has the most egregious example of forbidden combat mechanics. Deep in the animation files are movesets for weapons that were never released, but the code is still there, waiting to be activated by modders. These movesets reveal a game that was meant to have a far more fluid and aggressive combat system, one that was scrapped due to time constraints. The Giant Stone Axe. The Giant Stone Axe is a weapon that exists in the final game as a drop from the stone giants in the Forest of Fallen Giants. In the final version, it has a generic Great Axe moveset. But in the files, there is an animation set labeled Giant Axe _moveset. This moveset includes a spinning leap attack that was clearly meant for a boss. The animation shows the player character being lifted off the ground by the axe's momentum, spinning 360 degrees, and slamming down with an explosion. This moveset was disabled because the animation rigging caused the character model to clip through the floor on uneven terrain. In the rush development, they couldn't fix the terrain collision, so they replaced it with the standard moveset, Artorias' Legacy. There is a full set of animations in the files for a Greatsword of Artorias. This is not the majestic Greatsword, which is in the game. This is a different weapon, a direct import of the Dark Souls 1 moveset for Artorias' sword. The animations include the front flip slam that Artorias uses in his boss fight. This was cut because the developers felt it would be too fanservicey. But the code remains. Modders have since restored it, and it works perfectly. The weapon was fully functional. It was just disabled. The dual-wielding parry, one of the signature features of Dark Souls 2 is power stance, dual-wielding weapons of similar types to unlock a unique moveset. But there is a cut mechanic called dual parry. In the animation files, if you are in power stance with two curved swords, there is a unique parry animation where you cross the swords and spin them. This parry had a larger window than any other parry in the game. It was meant to be the reward for mastering the complex stat requirements of power stance. Why was it cut? Because it was unbalanced in internal playtesting. The developers feared that players would only use dual curved swords for the easy parry, leading to a stale meta. So, they removed the animation, leaving the standard parry. But the data for the extended window is still tied to the animation ID. If a modder reassigns the animation, the extended window returns. It's a ghost in the machine, the forbidden lore of combat. These cut movesets are forbidden because they represent a version of Dark Souls 2 that was faster, more aggressive, and more stylish. The game we have is slower, more methodical. The cut animations suggest that the combat was originally designed to be closer to Bloodborne, which was in development simultaneously. The spinning leap of the giant axe is a Bloodborne trick weapon style move. The dual parry is a Sekiro style mechanic. The developers had to choose, make the game Dark Souls 2 or make it Bloodborne. They chose to keep Dark Souls 2 slow to differentiate the franchises. But the files are there, a forbidden alternate reality where Drangliak was filled with high-flying acrobatics and parry-spamming chaos. Every time you swing a great axe in the final game, you are swinging a neutered version of what was intended. The real moveset is locked away in the code, waiting for someone to break the seal. The Fire Keepers are Manus, the origin of the curse. We return to where we began, the Fire Keepers. The old hags and things betwixt. They are the first characters you meet, and they are the most mysterious. The forbidden secret of Dark Souls 2, the one that ties everything together, is that the Fire Keepers are not just old women. They are the original fragments of Manus. They are the mothers of the queens. And they are the ones who created the undead curse, the primordial serpent connection. In the cut content, there was a fourth Fire Keeper. She was located in the Dragon Shrine. Her name was Stroan, which is the name of the old Fire Keeper in Things Betwixt, the one who gives you the human effigy. But in the files, Stroan was labeled Firekeeper_Prime. Her dialogue files reveal that she was the one who gave the crown to the first king, Vendrick's predecessor. She says, "We gave him the crown. We gave him the power. But he wanted more. He wanted to live forever. So we gave him the curse. It was a gift. A gift of dark. This is the smoking gun." The Fire Keepers, the keepers of the bonfires, are not servants of the flame. They are servants of the dark. They created the undead curse as a tool to control the kings. When a king becomes too powerful, they curse him, forcing him to hollow and lose his ambition. The curse is not a natural phenomenon, it is a political weapon wielded by these ancient beings. This is why they are missing limbs. One is asleep, brain, one is mute, voice, one is old, body. They are literally pieces of a whole. They are waiting for the day when all the fragments are reunited. And the player, who possesses the essence of dark, is the catalyst, the forbidden ending, reconstructed. Using the cut dialogue files, modders have reconstructed a true ending that was removed. In this ending, if you collect all 4 crowns, Sunken, Iron, Ivory, and Vendrick's, and then speak to the fire keepers in things betwixt without killing any of the queens, you are given a choice. The fire keepers ask you to return to them. They want you to merge with them, to become the new Manus. If you accept, your character dissolves into dark, and the screen fades to black. The final line of dialogue, still in the game's audio files, just unused, is the Emerald Herald saying, "And so the dark was made whole again. And the world sighed, for it knew no more fire, no more curse. Only peace." This ending was cut because it was considered too alien for a Western audience. The idea that the good ending is to become a primordial monster was deemed too abstract. Instead, we got the walk away ending in Scholar, which is a watered-down version of this. Sound is memory. In Dark Souls 2, the audio design is a masterclass in melancholy, the gentle crackle of the Majla bonfire, the haunting hum of the Emerald Herald, the clang of metal in Drangliak Castle. But hidden within the game's files are sound files that were never meant to reach human ears. They are the voices of characters who no longer exist, the music of areas that were erased, and the ambient whispers of a narrative that was silenced. The lost dialogue of the Emerald Herald, Shanalate, is the guide of Dark Souls 2. Her voice, provided by the actress Ruth Negga, is calm and resigned. But in the game's files, there are dozens of unused dialogue lines. In the final game, she speaks to you at the bonfire and at the Dragon Shrine. The cut lines reveal a much more active role. She was meant to follow you into the Throne of Want. One line, marked Shanalat_Throne_Betrayal, has her saying, "I thought you were the one. The one who would break the cycle. But you are just another fragment, aren't you? Another piece of him." This line was likely meant to trigger if the player chose to side with Nashandra in the cut ending. It confirms that Shanalate knew the player was a fragment of Manus all along. Another set of lines, labeled Shanalat_Dragon_Courtship, reveals that she was originally meant to be a potential romance option, a mechanic that was scrapped entirely. In these lines, she speaks of what lies beyond the flesh, hinting that she could merge with the player to create a new being. This was likely part of the true ending, where the player becomes the new Manus. The lines were recorded but never implemented, leaving Shanalate as a distant, unattainable figure. The cut narrator, the old fire keeper. In the opening cinematic of Dark Souls 2, we hear a female narrator speak of the curse and the kingdom of Drangliak. In the final game, that narrator is never identified. But the files label her as Firekeeper_intro. It is the voice of the old fire keeper in Things Betwixt. However, there is a second set of intro lines, a male voice, deep and resonant, labeled Vendrick_intro. This male narration would have been the original introduction. Vendrick himself would have told you the story of his fall. It would have gone, "I am Vendrick, king of Drangliak. I sought the flame. I sought the dark. I found only myself, hollowed. You will follow the same path. Unless." The "unless" trails off. This intro was scrapped because it would have spoiled Vendrick's identity too early. But the audio file remains, a ghost of a king speaking from beyond the grave, the whispers of the abyss. One of the most unsettling cut audio files is simply labeled Abyss_Whispers. It is a track of layered voices, speaking in reverse. When reversed and slowed down, the voices are saying, "We are the fathers. We are the mothers. We are the ones who never left." This is the voice of the humanity sprites, the dark phantoms. In the cut content, the abyss was meant to be a living zone, with a dynamic soundtrack that reacted to your movement. The whispers would get louder the deeper you went, eventually becoming a cacophony that would damage your sanity meter, a cut mechanic similar to Eternal Darkness. The sanity meter was removed, but the whispers remain in the game's files. Some modders have restored them, creating a terrifying experience in the dark chasm of old. The whispers are not random, they are triggered by specific coordinates in the map, suggesting that the abyss was originally designed with a narrative that the player could listen to by exploring. The music of Lost Areas, the composer, Motoi Sakuraba, wrote a soundtrack that is beloved by fans. But there are 5 tracks in the files that are not used anywhere in the game. One track, titled Ash_Desert, is a somber piano piece reminiscent of Gwyn's theme. It was meant for the cut final area, the Ash Desert where the kiln of the first flame was located. Another track, Covenant_Triumph, is a rousing orchestral piece that would have played when you maxed out a Covenant. Since Covenant rewards in Dark Souls 2 are underwhelming, the track was cut. Hearing it today, you realize how much emotional weight the game was missing, the forbidden nature of unused audio. Why are these sound files forbidden? Because they represent the voice of the game that could have been. The Emerald Herald's cut lines show a character with agency and desperation. Vendrick's narration would have made the game feel like a Greek tragedy. The Abyss Whispers would have turned the game into a psychological horror experience. The developers silenced these voices to streamline the experience. But the silence is itself a choice. Every time you hear Shonalate say, "Bearer of the curse," you are hearing only a fraction of her intended dialogue. The rest is locked away, waiting for someone with the right tools to listen. That is the forbidden secret of the sound files. The game is not just hiding visuals, it is hiding voices. And those voices are screaming to be heard. The geometry of Lost Izalith, the cut connection to Dark Souls 1, we have discussed the Bone Lord and the remnants of Gwyn. But the most audacious forbidden secret is the physical connection between Drangleic and Lordran. The game tells us that Drangleic is a faraway land, perhaps built on the ruins of a previous kingdom. But the level geometry tells a different story. Through no-clip hacking and data mining, players have discovered that the world of Dark Souls 2 is literally layered on top of the world of Dark Souls 1, or at least, it was meant to be. The elevator to Lost Izalith. In the Scholar of the First Sin version, there is a strange elevator in the Dragon's Shrine that takes you down to nothing. It's just a room. But in the original 1.0 map files, that elevator was connected to a massive, unfinished area labeled Izalith_remains. This area was a labyrinth of stone roots and lava, featuring the same architecture as the demon ruins from Dark Souls 1. The player would have descended through the ruins of Lost Izalith to reach the Old Chaos, the final boss of the Ivory King DLC. This explains why the Old Chaos is a bed of lava surrounded by burnt arch trees. It is literally the chaos flame that the Witch of Izalith created. In the cut content, you were not just fighting the burnt Ivory King, you were descending into the heart of the original sin. The geometry was there. The developers blocked it off with a simple rock wall in the final game. The Ash Lake connection. Another cut geometry link is between the Shrine of Amana and Ash Lake. In the files, the river that flows through the Shrine of Amana is a direct continuation of the Ash Lake waterway. There was meant to be a hidden entrance near the Demon of Song that would lead to a vertical shaft descending into the giant trees of Ash Lake. You would have emerged in the same area as the Hydra from Dark Souls 1, but now drained and dead. This would have confirmed the fan theory that Drangleic is built on top of Lordran. The Shrine of Amana is a shrine to the Milfanito, who sing to calm the dead. But why would they be there? Because they are singing to the corpses of the ancient dragons that lie in Ash Lake below. The Forbidden Map overlay. Using modding tools, players have overlaid the map of Dark Souls 2 onto the map of Dark Souls 1. The alignment is not perfect, but certain landmarks match. The location of the Iron Keep, which sits atop a volcano, aligns roughly with the location of Sen's fortress. The location of Drangleic Castle aligns with Anerlondo. The location of the gutter aligns with Blighttown. The developers were literally building a new world on top of the old one. Why was this hidden? Because Dark Souls 2 was intended to be a soft reboot. The marketing emphasized a new story. If they had confirmed the geography, it would have tied the game too closely to the original, limiting its narrative freedom. So they erased the connections, but the foundation remains. When you fall through the geometry in the gutter, you sometimes see skybox textures from Dark Souls 1. They are leftovers, remnants of a world that was overwritten. The first flame, coordinates. Finally, the most damning evidence, the coordinates for the Throne of Want. If you knocklip out of the Throne of Want and travel due east, you will eventually hit a void. But in the 1.0 version, that void contained a placeholder object labeled kiln_pivot. This object is at the exact same coordinates as the kiln of the first flame from Dark Souls 1, adjusted for scale. The developers were planning to have the Throne of Want open into the kiln. This was cut for performance reasons. The PS3 couldn't load both maps simultaneously, and for narrative reasons. They didn't want players to literally walk from Drangliak Castle into the original game's final area. But the coordinate data proves intent. The world was physically connected. The forbidden truth, the geometry of Lost Izalith, is the ultimate forbidden secret because it reveals that Dark Souls 2 is not a sequel in the traditional sense, it is a spatial sequel. You are not following the timeline, you are walking on the graveyard of the first game. Every step you take in Drangliak is a step on the corpse of Lord Ran. The developers tried to hide this by obscuring the geography. But the coordinates don't lie. When you stand in the Shrine of Amana, you are standing above Ash Lake. When you stand in the Iron Keep, you are standing above Sen's fortress. The game is a palimpsest of geography. The forbidden knowledge is that you have been walking through the ruins of the first game the entire time, and you never knew it. The developers wanted you to feel the weight of history, but they were afraid you would only see fan service. So they buried the truth under layers of rock and water. Final synthesis, the end of forgetting. We have traveled through 10, now 12, forbidden secrets. We have seen the lost lords, the hidden stats, the mass graves, the glitched dragons, the erased kings, the banned moves, the silenced voices, and the buried geometry. Each secret is a fragment of the original vision for Dark Souls 2, a vision that was too ambitious, too dark, too mechanically complex, and too connected to its predecessor to survive the development cycle. What does it mean to know these secrets? In the world of Dark Souls, knowledge is a curse. To know the truth of the first sin is to go mad. To know the truth of the abyss is to become a creature of dark. To know the truth of Dark Souls 2 is to realize that the game you love is a ruin. It is Drangliak itself, a beautiful kingdom built on a foundation of broken dreams. The developers left these secrets in the code not because they were careless, but because they knew that someday, someone would dig them up. They knew that the community would find the Bone Lord, the ADP formula, the mass grave, the petrified dragon glitch, the identity of the Sunken King, the Rat King conspiracy, the banned movesets, the cut dialogue, and the geometry of Lost Izalith. They left them there as a gift, or a curse, for the players who wanted to look deeper. You are now one of those players. You have looked deeper. You have seen the scaffolding behind the cathedral, the wires behind the puppet. You cannot unsee it. When you next play Dark Souls 2, you will not see just a game, you will see a monument to what was lost, but perhaps that is the point. Dark Souls 2 is not a game about victory. It is a game about endurance. It is a game about walking through a world that is broken and finding meaning in the fragments. The forbidden secrets are the cracks in the facade, and through those cracks, we can see the light of a brighter, stranger game that might have been. The knowledge you were never meant to have. Dark Souls 2 is a game of ghosts. Ghosts in the code, ghosts in the lore, ghosts in the development history. The 10 secrets we have uncovered are not just trivia, they are the architecture of a game that was dismantled and rebuilt in a panic. The forbidden nature of these secrets lies in the fact that they reveal the artist's original intent, the intent that was deemed too complex, too morbid, or too unbalanced for the final product. To know about the Bone Lord is to see the shadow of Gwyn in every boss. To know about ADP is to understand the game's hidden contract with the player. To know about the Fire Keepers is to realize that the entire journey was a trap set by the first beings you met. You were never meant to discover these things. The developers scrubbed the code, rewrote the item descriptions, and patched the glitches. But the internet never forgets, and the data on the disk is eternal. If you have a copy of Dark Souls 2 version 1.0, the petrified dragon still waits to give you infinite souls. The Bone Lord still waits in the files to be resurrected by modders. The Fire Keepers still whisper the true ending in a language that was muted at the last moment. This is the final forbidden secret. Dark Souls 2 is not the game we played. It is the ghost of the game that was meant to be. And now that you know, you cannot unknow. You are cursed with the knowledge of what lies beneath Drangliak. The only question left is, will you link the fire, walk away, or return to things betwixt and become the dark once more? The journey is not over. There are still more secrets buried in the files, unused textures, odd item descriptions, obscure network test data. The community continues to dig. The curse of the seeker is that you never stop seeking. But now you know the truth, the secrets are infinite, and the game is eternal, so go ahead. Light the fire. Walk away. Become the dark. It doesn't matter. The secrets will remain, waiting for the next bearer of the curse to discover them. That is the final, forbidden secret. The game is not finished. It never was. And it never will be.